Hi,
everyone. Today is Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. Welcome. I'm Jeffrey Morgan, and this is a talk I host twice a week to discuss my experiences on the path of soul transcendence. This offering is brought to you by the Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness, with the encouragement and support of my friend John Morton, who holds the mystical traveler consciousness, which is the spiritual consciousness that allows us to do the work that we're doing here today. If you're new to the call, the format is simple. We're going to start by calling ourselves forward into the light, which is calling our awareness forward into the light of God that's already present. Then we're going to chant three Anai hues. Hue is an ancient name for God, and Anai invokes a quality of empathy and compassion. Then I'm going to play a video clip from my teacher, John Roger, and then I'm going to do a reading from the Jewish liturgy, Sabbath prayer, and then we can talk about whatever you would like. So with that, Ron Holnick, please call us forward into the light.
thank you, Jeffrey. Little unusual one tonight, but what the heck? Lord God of all creation, we asked this night to place into the light a very beloved canine friend of mine who made his transition just a few hours ago. His name is Jack. And in that guideline, let's put all of our four friended friends and two two you get what I'm saying. And what the heck? Let's add fish and fins and all the living beings that live on this planet at this time. And for this opportunity, Lord, we are so thankful. So be it.
I read a lot, and most of what I read is spiritual material, and I like the Sufi writings a lot, and poetry and things, but I have great difficulty in reading my discourses.
Because the Sufis give you comprehensive information. Discourses bring you the experiences of life to transform you to the spirit. Sufi information will not transform you to spirit, it just transforms the mind with information. And see, if I give you a recipe on how to make a cake, you can't eat it, but it sure will make you want to go home and cook it. Going home and cooking, that's the movement of spiritual inner awareness. Reading it's Sufi. But most of us don't have to read the recipe. We'll go buy the cake and let somebody else cook it. And if we don't like it, we buy a different one. And some of us will buy the recipe and go home and cook the cake and find out I don't like Sufi stuff. And others love it. Some people I know just thrive on tofu. You know, I'm like one of these people that can't wait to find a pot to spit it in. Do I know it's good for me? Oh, yes, I comprehend all that. What does my body think about it? But then I find out what is in tofu and I go eat it in another form. So I still get the ingredient. I just don't like it that way. So the discourses are written for you to take and put it into your own understanding so you can have it any way you want it. It isn't to get it my way. I'm the only one that can do my way. Ultimately, each one has to do it their own way. But like everything else that's in the physical world, in the psychic material worlds, there has to be roadmaps to get there because it's so big. And all I do is show a way through it. When I say, when you get up there, you'll see it just the same as I will. I don't know if you'll see it exactly the same way. And so when I say when we get in the Spirit, we'll see it close enough that we'll be in agreement with it. That agreement and then the commitment to the agreement is the love. The supporting each other is the loving.
All right. This is from the Jewish liturgy or the Sabbath prayer on Shabbat. Only for God doth my soul wait in stillness. From him cometh my hope. He alone is my rock and my salvation. I shall not be moved. Show me thy ways, O Lord. Teach me thy paths. Guide me to thy truth. Whom have I in heaven but thee? And having thee, I desire none else upon earth. My flesh and my heart fail, but God is my strength and my portion forever. Wait for the Lord, be strong, and let thy heart take courage. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. When many cares perplex me, thy comfort delights my soul. My times are in thy hand, and thou wilt guide and sustain me even unto the end. With thee is the mountain of life. In thy light do we see light. Amen. All right. What would you like to talk about today? Hey, Makeda. Can't hear you. Yeah, there.
Hi. Hi, Jeffrey. Um, so I wanted to talk to you about um, a process that inside myself that I'd like to just gain greater clarity on. Um, and so I've been like involved with Insight and assisting and team captaining some with those seminars. And what I've noticed as I've started to go into more leadership with that is that sometimes um, I'm missing things. Like I'll be focusing on something or I'll notice all these things happening like energetically in the room or someone next to me. And I just like I'm missing logistical things and um I've gotten feedback that it looks like I'm just like somewhere else or like I'm just like
Mm.
dissociating from what's going on. So I've been looking at that and trying to see what that process might be. Um, and yeah, it's interesting because it like I don't feel like I'm going somewhere, but I do also know what people are talking about. Like I know that there's something about me that's a lot of times actually, I think not super present, or it's like there's like this barrier kind of between me and other people. So yeah, I was wondering if you could talk to me about that. And then there's a second thing that's kind of related. Should I say that now or after?
Up to you.
Okay. Well, the second thing that I think is also interacting with that right now is just like everything since like my last initiation. Like I've there are times like I feel like I'm just coming out of it. Um, like one of these periods of time. Sometimes it's like a few hours, sometimes it's minutes, sometimes it's like really like this has been like since like this earlier in the day, like almost like 24 hours. It was like a really long time of just like where it's just like I'm in this other space and I just like can't really like connect. I just feel like really weird and sometimes like sad, but just like in this like deep space. And maybe that's fine and that's normal for what I'm dealing with, but those two things are kind of interacting as well. Like one I think is more like me and something with like my wiring, and then the other is maybe more related to what I'm dealing with on the so, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, that's a lot, maybe.
No, no, not at all.
Okay.
So it's interesting having some, let's say, alternative wiring myself. I find that people often try to place my behavior into buckets that are comfortable for them. So, for
Mhm.
example, they might look at your behavior and they say, oh, this person's dissociated, because that's what they would look like if they were disassociated. So they kind of try to categorize your behavior. Oh, you're not engaged. I guess the net result is you miss things. Like you said, you might drop some details or not notice something in the room or something. What it sounds more like to me, tuning in, is more that, see, one of the most taxing and important jobs of the brain is actually tuning out information. Like if we take in 14 million bits, we're perceiving maybe 14 consciously.
Hmm.
So there's a way in which, even on a physical level, the ability to tune out information is essential for us to maintain any form of focus. And that's just the physical. Now, if you're someone who has sensitivity and intuition, you multiply that even more, right? Because then you're talking about situations where you may be perceiving the energetics of the room. And depending on what part of your consciousness you're using to do that, it might be more sensing or feeling versus having awareness or information. And it can feel a bit overwhelming, and it feels like your attention is kind of dispersed because you're scanning and getting all this information at the same time. Does that sound at all familiar?
Yeah, yeah, it does. Like I have a reference point for what you're talking about, but sometimes it's not even conscious. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not even
I'm not,
conscious.
yeah, I don't think it would be. I mean,
Mhm.
if it were conscious, you could somehow work with it, or conscious, you could somehow turn off or ignore this piece of it. And then, but if you go into a
Yeah.
place where you're kind of expanding your field out and just being aware of everything, it's like a lot of information at the same time. And I
Hmm.
think that as we work in higher levels of consciousness, higher, lower, whatever, as we work in higher frequencies or more subtle levels of consciousness, it can start to pull our attention away. And if, for example, somebody was working the unconscious as part of their, let's say, their spiritual work, or the curriculum that they're working on as part of like an initiation, that will, by its very nature, pull to the surface things that don't necessarily make sense. And yet they'll take a portion of your RAM, your random access memory, your processing capacity, to work through that to some extent. So it may feel like your
Okay.
attention is divided, or a smaller percentage of your attention is available for conscious processing because so much is going on in the unconscious level. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Hmm.
I think that to a large extent, one of the big lessons for people with sensitivity like yourself is moving to a place where you're allowing the action to happen through you, not by you, but through you, and you start to create density and anchoring in the body. So it'd be like barefoot on the ground, low center of gravity. So you have this simultaneity of walking in the high spirit while you're fully engaged with the physical. And I think that's one of the extraordinary aspects of what we do in MSIA, in the sense that we're not told to renounce the world and go to a cave and disengage. We're actually told engage and bring that same sacredness you would if you were in a cave somewhere into that everyday life. And I think there's really a beauty in that, like bringing the sacredness of the sannyasi or the Brahmin into the service, mundane, in the world aspects of the householder, and we bring the two together. I don't think it's a question of, see, if you were to use the same techniques that people generally do on the, like, who are more materially oriented rather than intuitive or sensitive, I don't get the sense that those techniques will work for you. And in fact, they may just create frustration and kind of upset inside of you if you try to like fit other people's version of what focused looks like. So for me, what's always worked is more the harmony. If I start to consciously acknowledge that I'm perceiving on multiple realities and multiple dimensions, then I can start to work harmoniously with those levels and treat them all the same. In the sense that, like, I perceive a lot that is not physically or consciously apparent to most people, but I've placed them on the same plane and I work with them consciously. It becomes more problematic when it's being worked unconsciously, because the net result is your attention is very fragmented and only a small percentage of your consciousness is available for conscious interaction. And so people will say, oh, you just seem not present, you seem not there. It's just because you're processing a lot.
Yeah. And it's like it's frustrating because then even in like sometimes when it's really bad, it's like I can't even communicate. Like it's to the
Yeah.
point where I like because there's so much going on, I don't even understand how to and I like can know and then I get emotional about it and then I start crying and
Yeah.
it just gets into this whole thing that is not really functional
Yes.
for other people or for me in a way too because to like lead a seminar and stuff like that.
Yes, because so it's interesting. So it's really an asset in a sense, having sensitivity to the energetics of a space when you're leading a seminar, because you may be able to keep it more clear or keep the focus in the room and the energetics of the room a little bit cleaner throughout the process. So that's great. At the same time, it's how do I become that anchor point? How do I become that rock upon which that energy can ride? And so it can also be tempting to consider that there's a here and a there. So we separate the focus and kind of say, oh, well, when I'm here, I'm not there. And when I'm there, I'm not here. And that belief in that structure and that presence to that structure and that you could say illusion of space has you in this notion that when you're working on those more subtle levels spiritually, you can't be fully present here. But as time goes on, you get to a place where you can do both at once and you realize
Hmm.
they're the same. And I know that
How do
sounds
I,
strange, but it's, huh?
how do I do that?
Yeah. So a lot of it is around clearing and quickening the consciousness so that you can be a good conductor of that energy, a good commutator of that energy. Usually people will get knocked out of their body when there's incompatibility or some resistance on the way down. It's hard to explain. It's almost like the energy tries to touch down through the body as an anchor point, but there's some incompatibility along the way, so it starts to disperse upward. And so your focus is pulled upward versus just allowing it to anchor all the way into the planet, and then you become kind of like a walking pillar of light.
That's how I feel. Like I had so much energy. Like I think that's
Yeah,
why
it
I
gets
looked
stuck
like
around here.
associated because it's
Yeah.
everything is like, stuck here in my energy.
It gets stuck here versus comes down as like a pillar of light
Yeah.
into the center of the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that can be a variety of stuff. A lot of that, what you're talking about, happens at the level of kind of right around here, you'll get identity. At the high, so it's not blocked up here where you're doing your SCs at the high part of the third eye center. That's not a problem. That's great. But as it starts to get around here and then starts to break about here, you'll start to get clunkiness. And by the time you get here, it's like a trickle. And by the time you get to your feet, so it just starts to disperse upward.
And I have a
So
hunch here, like on my back,
yeah,
my neck.
yeah, yeah. So if I were you, well, an approach that's worked for me is to take that quality of the spirit, like I'm an instrument of God. Like if you could say like what's that image or what's that orb of light that has that image of I'm an instrument of God, and I dedicate every level layer and aspect of my being to service of the mystical traveler consciousness or whatever that is, or the Christ. You start to take that and run that through different levels on your way down and see where it goes clunk. And that's where the integrity comes in. I think you'll know where it goes clunk, and then you're going to have to kind of double click on it and figure out what's the clunk about. And the clunk will often be things like a role that you've assigned yourself, a memory of a past action, a judgment you've placed upon people who do this. Like oftentimes it'll be like in a past life you judged or condemned somebody who went insane because they went into this kind of ecstatic presence, like the Sufis, like going a bit like ecstatic with God, or the Hasidic Jews, like kind of dancing. They will go a little crazy at times. If there was a part of you that judged that, you would resist the process for fear that you were going to go crazy. So it's like that kind of thing can come in and create layers of resistance so that it can't pass through and anchor into the ground. So it's like, for me, it really is like becoming a walking column of light where you're constantly receptive to this emanation from the high spirit that extends down through you and through your feet and into the earth. That everywhere you walk becomes sacred ground, becomes blessed, and you have that intention in your consciousness. So I think, and I think at the end of the day, what I love about in the movement of spiritual inner awareness, that whole notion of like we have initiation that's pulling upward and outward, like pulling in out, like out beyond this level, this field of cause and effect, and going beyond and transcending. We also have a ministerial consciousness through the Melchizedek priesthood that extends down and expresses out through the structure of the consciousness into this world. So there's that dual action and simultaneity that is extremely beautiful, that balances and that expresses often as great strength. But the strength is not your strength, it's the strength of the one who sent you. Like for myself, I can do nothing. I listen and I judge, and my judgment is just because I do not do it for my sake, but for the sake of the one who sent me. So you have that awareness that you don't have to have your strength. You don't have to have your sense of perfection. You don't have to have you can just be a clean instrument by which the spirit can touch down and express freely. I think at times in the past, it can feel like you want to cry because there's an ego in front of you that's puffed up. But that ego in front of you that may
Someone
be puffed.
else's.
No, when somebody's like, when
Someone
somebody
else.
comes to you with ego, like, why are you not doing this? Or why not? And they have that puffed up energy about it. It can feel like being smushed. But when you're having the authority of that spirit coming through you, there's no ego is going to stand up to that. Not that it's a conflict, but you don't have to worry about being shaken the way that you are sometimes. You understand when somebody comes against you and you feel like you collapse a little bit?
Sort of. Yeah. I don't really think of it as like they're coming against me.
No, it's more like the presence is tough and you don't, and because you're scattered in a sense, it's like you can't match it or you can't relate to it. So you talked about not being able to talk or not being able to relate or not being able to connect in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's like that. Sometimes with another person, but sometimes I don't know, like I don't always know if it how much it is really about the other person.
No, it's
Because
not.
sometimes yeah, okay.
I'm not saying it's about the other person. I'm saying you're experiencing a reaction inside of you to the extent
Hmm.
that you're attempting to navigate with a ego versus just allowing the fullness of the spirit to express through a stable structure. So it's not a me, it's a big capital I am that's coming through.
Okay. I sort of understand.
You will.
Okay. But are
But
you talking
placing
about
that intention on but placing that intention on being that column of light and having that stability and structure in the process. And posture can be a part of it to the extent you're resisting the energy coming through. I mean, I've popped out a rib before, like just resisting the energy without knowing it. Like whoever upstairs who decided they turn up the volume, the energy comes through and pop my ribs out. And I
Mhm.
realized that I had a judgment, I had a something, I clear it and then push my rib back in.
No.
It was very painful. So it's not, to me, it's not crazy to hear that you might have some posture challenges if you're resisting the energy coming through without knowing it.
Yeah. It
You
definitely,
follow what
for
I'm
me,
saying?
it seems like there's a lot of that there, those things are related. It's something I've been looking at. So, yeah. If anybody has somebody who can help with my on the call, feel free to send a chat with my, it's like a little bit of a hunch where my neck meets like my shoulders. I do
Like
stretches.
C7, T1 kind of thing?
Probably, yeah, something like that.
Yeah. No, I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a lot of amazing practitioners on the call who could probably help you with that, or people who know amazing practitioners. That's one thing
Hmm.
that's beautiful about our community. We have a lot of wonderful, good practitioners and that do really cool body stuff. So,
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Jeffrey. Yeah, I just have one other question with
uh-huh.
the envisioning the light. You said some specific words, and maybe the words don't matter, but if you do remember what they were that you were saying, envisioning
Yeah,
like
it was kind of like I was like, what's that quality of surrender, or I dedicate every level, layer, and aspect of my being to serving the mystical traveler consciousness. It's that surrendering and allowing that light to pass through. And then in integrity, moving that quality, which, for me, often it helps to put an image on it. So if I have an image, like often it's JR in relation to something. So I'll see, because that's my reference point, I'll see that or an image that evokes that. And then I'll bring that quality through my consciousness and see where it goes clunk. And then where it goes clunk, I'll start to dialogue with the clunk and figure out what exactly that's about until it moves real smooth. Because my sense is like, so I've done sessions with multiple people in the room, and sometimes I'll be working with somebody, and an energy will come in really strong to support the clearing, but the other people in the room won't have compatibility with the flow of that energy, so they'll just pass out
mm,
because they can't hold conscious and participate with that energy.
hmm.
So what I'm saying is, if the energy comes in and you feel like you're kind of going out of your body or at least dispersing in your consciousness, it just may be that it's not fully anchoring down and you're not fully holding that or allowing it to pass through. So that's why I'm suggesting this
Oh,
technique.
okay. Yeah, so it could help with that part too. Yeah.
Correct. Because I
Okay.
think that a lot of people, myself included, sensitivity felt a bit like a burden. But I think as we learn to work it for our highest good, it starts to feel a lot like an asset and something
I
that
think
can
it,
really help in our service.
I have experienced that at different times. I think right now it's just everything just feels so confusing and like there's no like all my conclusions seem to be wrong that
Yeah, I know
so
that. I know that feeling
it's
too.
like I
I
can't really
so
do anything with it.
I've often found that spirit meets me at the level of my action. So when in doubt, put some energy out and see if it flows. If it goes clunk, then you know it's not right. You get what I'm saying? So like less about the thinking, less about the analysis, more about just putting loving energy in a direction and just seeing if it resonates, seeing if it moves.
Okay.
It's like let because you're so musical, let's do a musical image. It's like if you want to know if a cavern is deep and has enough space to accommodate you, you yell into it, and if you hear an echo, it's probably pretty deep. And if you don't hear anything, you're like, ah, that's probably pretty shallow. You get what I'm saying? It's like you can do things to test that are more action oriented, and then you get feedback from your universe on that versus going into the mind where, depending on the level you're working spiritually, might be very, very confusing.
Mm. Like asking somebody if somebody seems like they're having a disturbance, like asking them like are you upset about something or like that kind of action or what kind of action?
Well, if that in that particular circumstance, I would go to them inside of you first and work the process with them inside of you to clear whatever's there. And then if you still get a hit to check with them, then check with them. But it's like the saying of Jesus when it's like before you take the splinter out of somebody else's eye, examine the plank in your own eye. So like I
Yeah.
would say I would say immediately go and work the process inside of you, do the forgiveness, do the things you know how to do, and then check with the person and say and because then you're not bringing any of your junk to the table. It's just real open and clear in that particular. But I'm saying in terms of decision making in your life and in terms of the
Okay.
confusion you may feel, oftentimes you can tell. Like sometimes the next step is just to take a step and see how it feels. And then you're going to
Yeah.
get feedback immediately going, oh, there's light on this, I feel joy on this, I feel loving on this, or I step and you go, oh wow, I stepped on a nail. I shouldn't walk that direction, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Yeah,
it's usually
got
the
that.
feedback can be immediate. Thinking about it can lead to
Hmm.
confusion, like I said, depending on the karma you're working with the mental or unconscious levels.
Yeah, I
So it
definitely
can
know that.
Yeah. So when it's a confusing time, I usually let the energy demonstrate what's true. You get it? Like
Yeah, like
if it's
the
on, it
response.
will be strong. Yeah. If it's on, it will be strong. If it's not, it'll go, you know. It's not really something you need to debate. It's like it's either going to work or it's not.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I get. I mean, I don't know if I get what you're saying, but I get what I think you're
I
saying.
I think you got it. I think you got
Okay.
it. All right.
Thank you,
God
Jeffrey.
bless you. Anything else?
Um, that's all I got right now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Hey, Kristen.
Hello. Um, I'm really resonating with that conversation. Um, and I think so for me, I feel it like the clunk goes in my navel center
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, and it's like if I just take my attention away from focus, then it'll happen, which then so but like what came forward for me this weekend, I was in a process, and I think this relates for me is that I had a just like thinking of how to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a part of me that I worked with that at the end of the process as I left it, she became sovereign. And that's not the first time that that's happened, but it was for this obviously part. And it was really powerful. Um, and I think like the sovereignty had to do with sovereignty over how my energy and like what's happening with my energy inside and keeping that like a clean space, but also in my outer space. Oh, I can't see you anymore.
I'm here.
Okay, there we go. Um, so like, and I like what you said about authority, because to me, like, there's something about sovereignty and authority.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels really important and it feels really powerful. And it feels like the way that I came forward was so strong. Um, so I don't know, like, if I have a specific question, but do you know what I'm saying?
I think I do. I don't use the term sovereignty much outside of political context, like sovereign nation or something like that, but I think I get what you're saying. Um, and I think you kind of explained it and gave it context, so that helped me a lot. As far as authority, I find that for me, the most important is to let go of the me that would seek authority and allow this consciousness to be the vehicle for higher spiritual authority that's beyond the me. So oftentimes externally, we look at authority in terms of behavior. Like, will somebody speak with a certain tone or have a certain energy when they speak? And from the outside looking in, it may look identical, but where we source from is super critical in my experience. And sourcing from what you could call maybe God ego versus individual ego or spiritual ego, sourcing from beyond the me, beyond the construct, and then you become simply a vehicle for that expression. I find that the kind of power that we can obtain through the ego is always fleeting, whereas the power that comes from the spirit seems to be eternal and has no end. And it seems to be complete in its expression, whereas expressions of egoic power always require a response within the karma. Oftentimes, expressions of authentic empowerment from the spirit are complete and self-contained actions. But when you were talking about your psychic center, like I guess you were talking about your root chakra, or like I was trying to orient.
Second.
Oh yeah, that one. Gotcha. Gotcha. So is it near like what we would call the creative center?
Yeah, it's my navel center.
Like hips,
Sometimes
navels. Got it. Got it. Got it.
sometimes I get it in my throat, but it more is like goes in front of my throat. But this is in my navel. That's like a bigger, I would say, opening.
Opening. It is interesting, but I have found, now I don't fully understand this intellectually, but at times I felt like different psychic centers in my body can have their own agenda. And
Hmm.
so it's almost like I need to help them clear individually. Like I'll have a belief that's locked in a specific center, and then I'll need to help clear the belief from that center. And it can be
Yeah.
really weird stuff. Like you had a traumatic experience and this chakra thinks you're dead. It's really
Mm.
like it doesn't logically compute, but for some reason it works for clearing the consciousness. So
Huh.
what you're saying about having an experience of being open or being susceptible to influences energetically versus being sovereign or having
Yeah.
authority,
Yeah.
I can understand how an individual energy center can have that experience. Have you dialogued with that part of you or that center to understand it or what the intention is behind how it was set up? Because most of the time, the things that are set up in the consciousness were set up intentionally or as a result, as a logical response or a rational response to a circumstance in our karmic history. We just don't know what that is because of amnesia.
Yeah. I have a sense of it. I can continue working with it, but it does feel, I mean, there's been so much already that's like, I would say sealed up, but it does feel like it's really relates to my sense of sovereignty and
Got it.
um mhm. And authority. Like I don't really, I'm not that familiar with that word, but I like what you're talking about, like the spiritual authority. That's, it's kind of, anyway, just greater like strength, I think.
Yeah. So for me, um, doing becomes more about allowing God to do for me, and authority becomes let's use your word sovereignty. Sovereignty becomes about allowing the sovereignty of spirit to express cleanly through me without any me in the way of that.
Yeah, and I'm not thinking of sovereignty and authority as the same, but
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying.
I'm saying the qualities that I often seek to express, or the part of me seeks to express, is often a poor substitute for the ultimate expression of that through spirit. Therefore, emptying of the self, emptying of the consciousness, will allow those qualities to express more fully and cleanly in a way that doesn't necessarily result in the accrual of karma.
Mhm.
You follow?
Yeah,
So it may
got
be
it.
interesting, like shifting the perspective to be less about sovereignty and what that experience is and like it might be more about clearing a pathway through all the centers of your body so that that spirit can express fully through it.
That sounds great.
It might be a different way to approach it
Yeah,
versus attempting to problem solve on sovereignty in that center.
I don't know if I'm doing that, but I like what I like, that's what I want, right? The energy to come all the way
Yeah,
through.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. It's yeah, exactly. It's like an electrical wire. If there's impurities in the wire, if there's something stuck in there, that will cause heat to accumulate or, short out the circuit or, versus if it moves freely through, it can ground.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Great to talk to
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. God bless you.
You too.
Ronnie,
Hi, Jeffrey.
hello.
My name is Ronnie, and I'd like to ask for an assistance in unpacking to assist me with on the journey of peace of mind. My
Hmm.
questions are in relation to health,
Okay.
and I have diligently worked on checking it out, the past 2 years, I would say I've experienced multiple challenges from functionality. That means day-to-day functionality. From joint pains, being referred to rheumatologist. The marker was not there, so I've been let go. And cardiologist, again, did not fit the range of what a cardiologist is looking for. So I got a tick of approval. And I've been consulted with 2 hematologists who are reviewing the blood, where it has gone to, particularly a white cell has gone to a level where it's still a decision making right now, whether a bone marrow test would be required, but still going through that investigation for the past 10 months.
So you're dealing with joint pain in your lower body or upper body or both, or
initially extensively at lower body with mobility. I'm unable to walk even 2 flights of stairs. Knees,
so knees,
ankles, and it
knees,
has
ankles.
now with hips, and particularly then a very serious migraine has led to a neurologist due to some medication complication, and neurologist has now worked with a cardiologist, and I'm on a beta blocker just to make sure that the pumping is slowed down. So it can help with my migraine, and it has been on a day-to-day basis, and it can be a day that completely can go unplanned. How it will turn out in the morning to the evening becomes completely out of my control. In this process, I also like to share, because as part of the earlier sharing, on a very different occasions, I've had a number of dreams that related very clearly with a very angry self. That's me.
Yeah.
Don't know if there is any relationship, but joint pains is inflammation. So I'm just trying to deduce for a clarity, because I've worked diligently on checking it out, and I'm still checking it out from a medical profession where I have a very extensive pain on my shoulder blades on my left side, as if an X is stuck there and hanging visually.
Got it.
And that pain, when it accelerates, that's when the neck and the head becomes extremely cruciatingly dysfunctional. What I like to seek assistance here is that from a very go-getter person with a high energy, it has really sort of put me my day to an extent unplanned. Mentally, I'm not able to visualize my future ahead. And I don't know, like you just earlier said, that conscious level could be very clearly related with karmic path in the past. And I am just like some understanding here so that I can have peace of mind that I might still be able to have a good quality of life.
Okay. Well, a couple of thoughts before I make some suggestions. Quality of life is largely dictated by attitude. I understand that pain is difficult from an attitude perspective. It can be very challenging to maintain a positive attitude when you're in pain, especially if that pain is very high. At the same time, for me, I take comfort in the notion that I'm completing that karma, that whatever it is I need to clean up, whatever it is I need to complete, I'm doing that and I'm going home to God. So for me, there's that aspect when we work with the mystical traveler. If there was ever a thought that there was any accident in our lives, that just goes out the window. Everything becomes intentionally placed on our path so that we can clear the karma necessary to enter the kingdom of God, and into the heart of God. So for me, I always anchor that to start.
It's a bit challenging.
And of course, no. I know. I just wanted to frame up the discussion on that level because I think that's important as a context with whatever we do.
Mhm.
If this is the price that I'm to pay, Lord, to enter the kingdom of God and into the heart of God, I pay it gladly. And then in the way we describe our life, we use a story that has that in it versus a story of suffering and affliction and how you once had a really great life and it was taken from you by that kind of thing. So it's important that because there's a part of you listening to that story. That's number one.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of dealing with physical pain, I I'll have to do this nice little caveat, nice little disclaimer. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional. I suggest that you seek assistance from medical professionals who have knowledge and understanding. We have some really wonderful healers probably on the call right now who could do amazing things with diet and herbs and all kind of stuff that you probably wouldn't even think is related, but is related. And I suggest you try all that stuff. Now that I've ticked that box, I'll share that oftentimes what I find when somebody has physical symptoms that seemingly have no cause,
Yep.
it's usually a non-physical cause. Pain and inflammation are often indicators of spiritual phenomena. That's one way the body will indicate that something energetic is going on. And usually pain is associated with an energetic blockage. And the energetic blockage can originate in a lot of places. So, for example, if somebody was taught to behave in a certain way and not to express their upset throughout their life in various contexts, or they were not allowed to fully express an aspect of their consciousness, the energy has to go somewhere. If you're like a passionate and high energy person, but you only have this little sliver of expression that's acceptable to you, you're going to have to put the energy somewhere. So the energy starts to build up in the systems of the body. And as the energy builds up, it can start to create blockages and dysfunctions. Another way that this can happen is if you decide that a certain type of expression is not acceptable or that you don't feel comfortable with, then what will happen is in order to make that possible or feasible in the midst of having a buildup of that energy, the basic self will very loyally and dutifully cut off functions of the body or cut off aspects of the body that if they were released would force you to have to express all of that. That expression or the origin of that upset may be something like grief or something like shame. Those can be associated with the knees, my will versus thy will. So arguments with reality, arguments with God. All of that can happen. Or not feeling understood. Those can all build up and result in inflammation. So from my experience, if I would always suggest trying whatever you can on the physical level, physically, but I would also consider that this may be your basic self, your body doing the best it can with what it knows to try and accommodate a set of contradictory instructions that you put in place over a period of years. And so it becomes a process of examining those contradictory instructions and saying, wait a minute, where am I blocking energy in my body? What are the aspects of myself I'm not letting fully express? What are the things that got stuffed into my subconscious that I'm not wanting to address right now? And you start to just allow all of that to flow, the energy flow, the movement. So that's kind of what I was seeing on all of it. That may or may not fit, but uh, I think if I were in your position, I would really start to look at those non-physical causes, but internal. I mean, look, there's always the possibility of things like psychic attacks, things like that, triggering inflammation that can totally happen. But oftentimes humans don't really need that in order to create pain. Humans can create pain by blocking their own energy. So it may be something to consider if all of you has been allowed to express fully.
Um, uh, yeah, I really don't know what I could have deposited somewhere up there that I'm either clearing or like you earlier said, it's like get through it once and for all. So it's nice to know if
Yeah.
I'm getting through it once and for all. So the remaining
Yes.
of the years left it's a bit more fun living, yes.
Yeah. And it might just be a karma to pay that's going to happen for a period of time and then it stops. So it could just be a thing that you got to walk through to complete something that you set in motion in another lifetime and then it's done.
Is there something that I can consider as an immediate like a tool or technique that I can work on? I mean, there's so many blockages. I mean, I'm so unclear and brain fogged that, you know, I sometimes just do not have clarity where to start. What is the first step that I can look at?
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple pieces there. One is right now you're relating it to it as brain fog. It might be a process of cleansing. So what'll also happen, and this is another place where pain can come up. If you're upgraded spiritually, sometimes the lower self has to catch up. So things get adjusted and things will happen, like, for example, a rechemicalization of the body, where you might, in some cases, like you might throw up or you might have indigestion or things like that. That can happen when you're getting upgraded. And part of the upgrade may also be all the parts of you that are not compatible with the new frequency that's coming forward comes up to be processed. So you're calling it brain fog. It may be that you're not yet at a place where you can hold the energy that's coming forward. I've gone through periods of time where divine unknowing hits me and I can't hold any memory in my consciousness, which is not very convenient for like corporate presentations and
Yes.
things that I was doing, but it becomes a leap of faith. And it may be that what you're going through is a process of starting to live more spiritually rather than more physically referent. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, like, right now, if you've been acting from mental ego level for all these years and you've been kind of ignoring a more intuitive dimension as an origin for your action, it may be an opportunity for you to shift and start seeing that more intuitive associative quality that's coming forward for you as an asset. And so you start to harmonize with it. Like what I'm trying to tell you is there's releasing in the process. And the more you try to reference back to who you were and what you did with the mental ego level, the more it will be frustrating for you. I've been through those kinds of transformations before where the body has to catch up.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily something that you can control. And you accelerate it by clearing the levels of resistance and the blockages that I was telling you about earlier. There's an inherent intelligence to the transformation, transmutation, and transcendence of consciousness. And sometimes we just need to trust that intelligence. And the thing that we can do to help is to clear the blocks and release anything that we might have placed in the way of that process, which could be beliefs that we have about that process. It could be judgments. It could be anything that we have going on that is standing in the way of what is expressing. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I would like to.
Okay, let me give you a practical approach.
Could I just quote an example and then probably then
Perfect.
yeah. I was doing a class, PTS class, and there was this
Yes.
quote that says that, it's a Lao Tzu JR book, where I was so absorbed in the quote that says, I would like my eons of karma to be clear. So I grabbed that quote and just held it. So after the PTS class, I was just sitting on the couch and ended up calling for an ambulance because I was about to pass out. Based on what you shared earlier, could this be related, or it's just my logical mind would like some understanding because I'd like to put this relationship together, but as you said earlier,
Yeah.
the logics gets in the way.
You ever hear the phrase "Be careful what you wish for," because you might get it? Yeah. Did you did you pray for a direct experience of God?
Yeah, I just wanted that eons of karma to be clear. I was very clear with that intention.
No. I hear you. But even before you got into MSIA, you wanted to know it. You wanted to
Oh,
have direct experience.
super clear
You
about that. Yes.
just thirsty for it. You
Yeah, I
prayed
was.
for it. You wanted it. And
Yes.
what if this is the price that you have to pay to get that? What if you're getting what you asked for? Because you're not going to relate to God directly through your mind and your ego and all the organization and structure and control that you've tried to run in your life. You're not going to get it through that. You're going to get it beyond that.
Right.
Right now, you've been relating to all of this as an affliction. Now, earlier I talked about you've been relating to it as a problem
Yes.
that you're trying to solve by
Yes.
seeing doctors.
Yes.
I'm just feeding back to you what you said.
Yes.
You
Yes.
said, yeah. What if this is an answer to a prayer and you just need to cooperate with it and learn how it works through you?
Wow, what a prayer.
No, but I tell the story often. I prayed to be free of a habit of judging myself horribly. I prayed, I was in college, I seeded all of my savings. It was a lot of money for me. I think it was like $500. It's the most I'd ever seeded. And it might as well have been $1,000,000 when you're in college and you're living on nothing. I seeded that money because I just wanted to leave myself alone, stop judging myself. And then the next month, I accidentally broke somebody's leg in jujitsu class. If you ever wanted to make me cry when I was a kid, tell me that I hurt someone. That's how bad it is in terms of me judging myself if I ever hurt somebody at that time. And I was pitying myself. How could God be doing this to me? How could this have happened? I've been praying and praying, and I seeded all that. How could this be happening to me? And I had to take the lady to the hospital. I had to support her in cleaning her house and helping her out while she was getting better. And then in and about October, I realized I was no longer judging myself. I realized that it was okay to make mistakes. For the first time in my life, it was okay to make mistakes. And I enjoyed it admitting that I made mistakes. I was totally free. Now, I prayed for that. I seeded for that. But was I willing to pay the price to get it? So it may be that what you're going through is in fact exactly what you prayed for. And what's waiting for you on the other side is actual authentic liberation. It's not a liberation that you get by being the star performer at work. It's not a liberation that you get by being in control in your mind and your ego. It's a liberation that you get by allowing God to take full control of the process, even if that means dealing with some pain. So it's a different approach because, like I said, it's like if there's an intelligence to the process, it becomes less about, dear God, can you please make this go away because I'm being punished by this horrible thing that's happening to me or whatever it is. I mean, you're not saying those words, but it kind of feels that way.
That way, yeah.
Right? Versus going, all right, God, I know this is for my highest good, and I know I have stuff to clear here. Please show me the ways and the means of clearing this in as accelerated and graceful a way as possible for the highest good of all concerned. You see the difference in approach?
Yes, definitely. Yes.
Do you remember what I said about attitude in the beginning?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I think for me, that's always been the key. If everything we go through, in a sense, is an answer to a prayer, then the blessings already are, right?
This is a lot smoother, peaceful. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, do the 10% level stuff. Talk to practitioners who specialize in inflammation. I mean, there's so many good practitioners out there. I love it. I mean, homeopathics, acupuncture, herbs. And you never know. I mean, your different bodies of, are different things. But that doesn't change the attitude you can have in relation to this.
Yes.
This can be a loving and sweet conversation between you and God.
Indeed.
And be open to the idea that there's more to clear, that more of who you think you are can be released and dispersed into spirit. So, for example, like I was talking about the blocks and the different things that weren't expressed.
Yes.
It can often come in as like you're operating through an anachronistic or outdated identity. Like it's a me that no longer fits the energy that is coming through. So I will often ask the question, who is the me that needs to be let go in order to be who God has truly made me right now? So it's like it's like you're shedding costumes, shedding skin. What are the limitations that are placed with that? It's subtle, right? It's not, it's like you're a fish in the ocean. It's the ocean. It's not another big fish. It's the fabric of your experience that may be limiting you, and it'll be hiding in there. So having that radical willingness to say, I'm willing to let go of whoever this person is who thinks they're suffering and thinks they've got knee problems and joint problems. And I'm willing to let her go and be the liberated one, to be God incarnate, to be the Christ manifestation, to be God walking on this planet. So you see, it's different than clearing a problem outside of you or finding a solution or all that kind of stuff. It's letting go of the whole thing and being even more of who you truly are.
Right. That means some aspect of the wishes and intention. The intention is there, but like certain aspect of I just got
Takes
to be prepared
courage.
to let go. Yes.
Yeah, you got to be prepared to exactly. And it's that willingness to look at all of those sacred cows and all of those things that, oh no, I would not, that's me. That's not something to clear. That's something I really like about myself. It's scary. It's scary. But having that radical willingness, it's like, from my experience, there's a seminar, Nuclear Radiation from Ground Zero. That's where John Roger kind of talks about the consciousness that I'm talking about. It's like where you have that such clarity of intention to let go of everything that is not God in you, everything that is not unadulterated, pure spirit expressing through you. You're willing to let that go. That intensity, in my experience, cannot be denied. But it does take courage, because the thing that we are often asked to let go of is the very thing we may like most about ourselves.
Yes.
Which could be the doer, could be the smart one, could be the one who's in control, could be the achiever, could be the successful woman, could be, you just fill in the blank.
Yes.
I might not have been guessing on those, by the way. But yeah,
Could be the one who
it's
can
letting go
enjoy
of
some
all.
green walks. Yes. Yes.
Exactly. But letting go of all those and just being the majesty and totality of who you truly are.
That's very comforting, Jeffrey.
It matches my experience. You could go try it out, see if it matches yours.
I surely will.
God bless you, Ronnie. Have a
Thank
good
you
night.
very much. God bless you, Jeffrey.
All right, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you. The blessings already are. God bless you.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you.